when you look back on your life, you can probably pinpoint a time of your past where it seems like everything was perfect. And you look back on it and it seems like you had everything figured out and those were the quote unquote good times, right? Well, that's not entirely true. Our mind, uh, our mind tends to edit the past and old events that have happened to us, and it takes out all of the negative stuff, and you can only remember the positives. I think it's very easy to look back, 6 months, a year ago, wherever, and when you look back on it, you think, man, I wish I could be back in that spot, right? I wish I could be that person again. I wish I was at that place with those people. And not even necessarily just like a whole month or a year, but just a time in your life. And what you probably don't realize is those days, months, that year was not as special as you think it was. Because you're forgetting all of the stress and anxiety and all the negative things that happened, right? When I look back on junior year of high school, and if you were to ask me, which teachers did you have, I can maybe name you one, right? I would need a yearbook or something to remember who were my teachers, right? But what I can tell you is that's the year I got my car, and that's the year I probably spent the most time socially with my friends. Because that's the most fun, memorable moment of that year, right? Um, and again, like I can't tell you the the negatives of that time frame, right? I can only tell you the positives. Like senior year, I can name you like one thing that was bad about it because it was a big point in my growth um, as a person. But I can also tell you that the biggest thing that I remember is I had one of my buddies in majority of my classes, which made it much more enjoyable. Um, I can also tell you that that was the most disassociated I've been with myself and the most confused. Because again, a big point in my life, right? Just as much as we can romanticize the past about certain times or events or people, we can also do the same with negative things. You can probably pinpoint a big part of your life that was a negative, but from there, you know, um, it was a pivotal point in your life, and from there on, nothing was the same, right? Shout out Drake. But it's much more rare for that to happen, right? There's a very small amount of things that are negative that we remember so clearly that'll push us forward, right? But those are probably the most important and the most distinct, most detailed memories that we have of the past. And I think we can relate those to um, we can relate to those to God putting us in that situation so that we can end up where we are today. When you look back and you think, man, God was there with me in that moment, and even if I didn't know what was going on or like completely trust his plan, it all turned out. Which is one of the most like beautiful things about having a relationship with God is like comparing, man, I was so insecure about this moment in my life. But looking back on it, it turned out better than I expected. Um, and that's all God. That is one of my favorite things to think about because usually it's pretty significant the faith aspect as well, and kind of excels you forward into believing more. It's very easy to romanticize the past when it includes certain people, and you can definitely associate a month or a year to a certain person, right? A relationship, um, or just a season in your life. Um, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, this year was a good year, but this year wasn't because of this or that. Or I hadn't met this person yet, and this year, this semester, I didn't have any friends in this class. Um, so when we have a good year, semester, day, month, whatever, it's very easy for us to overhype it in our heads. Because we have the like delusion, the rose-tinted glasses, right? And when we look at our current situation, it seems like that's like the peak, right? That was my prime. Um, but I think a lot of people get, at least for me, this has happened a lot. People get stuck in this cycle of, I guess, over fixating on it, obsessing over the past, and it gets into this cycle of, oh, life will never be as good as it was when I had less responsibilities and I was more innocent and everything was new and fun. Um, and don't get me wrong, like it's nice to look back on your childhood um, and remember it as a good time. Like we all should believe that because it was. We were just kids. But I think in this like teenage era, it's easy to get stuck and say like, oh, just because I had 3 girlfriends in this 2 month span, that was my prime, right? Things were more fun then, and that can be true. It can be, but your brain is making it seem that way, and sometimes what your brain can do when it has a traumatic experience or is in the healing process is it can alter or just completely like gray out certain moments, um, to like protect you or so that you can grow and heal, right? And the more space that you create from that time frame, the more you're going to heal from it and grow. So if I look back a year ago, which doesn't even sound like a long time ago, but it feels like a long time ago, and it was a completely different me. Brain fart. Man, I was really spitting. Totally just had a brain fart. Oh, that time seems to be better than now, but it's only because I'm not used to this space, this change. When I look back on that, it's familiar. I'm comfortable thinking about it because it's in the past and I know how it ends up. When we were living in that moment, in the present moment of the time we're thinking of, we didn't know it was next, right? We didn't know it was, you know, but we tend to overhype it when in reality, you don't know what's next, right? A man enters his like prime in his like mid 20s to like early 30s, I believe is what it is. So to think when I was 18, that's the best year, when we have so much life ahead of us that it's not just that was my peak. Your whole life is ahead of you. It's not just one point that's your best. You're going to have multiple, right? And the older you get, the more opportunities come up, more freedom. And when we were kids, we would always fantasize about the future when we could drive, you know, whatever it may be, when we can buy our own food and have ice cream every morning. But as you grow older, you wish you could go back, which I think is a common thing, but I think we need to change our perspective on that. Because when we want to be in a different spot than when we are now, that means that we aren't living the life that we want to. So I think to get out of that headspace, I hate how this dims when I back up, but we should be excited for what's next and be thankful about the past and who it made us today, but not over fixate on it, if that makes sense. Because that can be a very sour cycle. Um, because when you get stuck on that, you're just trying to escape your current reality and your current situation, right? And ultimately can make you depressed, just to be straightforward, because you're thinking of a time that you aren't currently living in, and you're telling yourself lies and gaslighting yourself into thinking that things can't be better than that. And that's just depressing. That's not a good way of looking at it. Um, and I think people use it as a coping mechanism, right? If they don't like their current job, um, like family situation, anything, their weight, their height, whatever it may be, just their life in general. Instead of making that change, they'll use that as an escape to just fantasize about, um, instead of working towards a better future and focusing on what's in front of you. Um, and I've found that out firsthand myself, right? When I would think about the past and me and my brain were being delusional, I would not work on my schoolwork because I knew I was struggling. So I would use that, politics, gaming, whatever it may be, to slip out of my current state and to, again, escape reality, right? Scroll reels, whatever it may be, instead of working towards a better future for myself in this current space, this current time that I'm living in. So what I would tend to do is do anything to get my mind off of um, schoolwork or whatever, because I was struggling in it and I was being lazy and didn't want to dive into it. So I would distract myself for hours and hours and hours and days. And that definitely hurt my GPA, self-esteem, everything. Um, so yeah, I would just sleep all day, just try and get out of my current situation. And the moment I started working towards bettering myself, doing things more productive, right? And not just going, straight from class to hopping on the game and instead, doing things that are actually beneficial, like reading the Bible or being social, um, going to eat at a dining hall with one of my buddies, right? Um, calling up a friend, literally anything else, and then entertaining yourself after that. That's what will ultimately push you in the right direction of evolving. Instead of staying in the same rotation of living the same day every day, right? Switch it up. Try eat different foods, exercise every day, do different exercises. If it's nice out, go on a walk. Listen to different music. That's a big one. Do not listen to only sad music. My gosh, one of the biggest mistakes I've made. Um, it's fine every once in a while, but once you listen to it every day, it definitely ruins you. That is 100% true because I have found that out the hard way. So switch up the music as well. Um, Also, just get into the Word of God, right? I think that's the biggest thing that has changed me. Like, before I would read the Bible by myself I was a very lukewarm Christian, I guess is the best way to put it. And I would think, oh, if I just go to Bible study in church every weekend, that's enough. And I convinced myself that for years, right? The moment I started reading the Bible by myself and digging in and really making it um, my own thing, that's when I actually felt the conviction to start changing. And once that happened, it felt like I was living life again. It felt like I was in like derealization and that I wasn't actually living my life and just spectating. But once I started doing this, it all changed from there. And I think every little thing about my life started to change for the better. Um, it's also made me speak better and be more intelligent. I think before doing this, I would just drink energy drinks and rely on that to make me feel sharp. Um, but also now it's more like read the Bible, eat healthy, and go work out. Way better alternative. It'll make you feel way better about yourself as well. Just a big confidence boost, right? If I'm confident about my body, I can go up and give a public speech pretty easily if I'm confident and just freeball it. But it's also one thing that I've noticed about myself is what's made me into the person I am today. And I've never really understood this until recently. Um, but I've always kind of had this comfort feeling deep down. I remember in high school, I had one of my friends, he'd ask me, like, how are you always so chill about tests or this or that? And I didn't really have an answer for him because I never really thought about it. I would just never be nervous about anything like that. Presentations, anything like that. What my grades were, none of that. And I think it's slowly grown a little bit of where I would have stress and anxiety over those things. But the main thing that I've found is that I've always had this trust in God's plan. And I think that's something that people struggle with that I've been blessed to be able to have come naturally to me. I've always just known that at the end of the day, it's all going to work out. Um, I used to use the phrase a lot, is what it is, and people would just call me a nonchalant or a chill guy. And I never really understood why I felt that way. But I think that is ultimately why I felt that way for all my life. And I think as I continue to grow in my faith, that's something that has kind of changed recently, which is concerning. I feel more stressed than I used to, but I think that's also because I'm more tapped into my emotions and I'm present as of now. Because back in the day, it did not feel that way. Um, it felt like I was just kind of drifting through day to day, just trying to get to the next day, never really looking forward to anything. I never really had any passions or goals. I still kind of don't. Um, Not kind of, I don't. But I have a general idea, and that could be a personality disorder or whatever, but um, that's just the truth. So I think when I look back on my life, it's very weird to look back because the way I see it, I was never, if it feels like I was never really present. Um, so that could be derealization, depression. I don't know, but the last 2 years, I would say, I've over romanticized as I've been speaking on. And I think that's why, because that was like the first moment where I feel like this life was mine and that I can do and pursue what I want. So when I look back on those moments, they seem like the best. But at the same time, it wasn't. more and more you think about it, the more you realize there's a lot of crappy stuff, a lot of ups and downs. It was not just ups. Um, but yeah, so definitely don't get stuck in that cycle of thinking about it too much. Just focus on what's ahead of you. Have clarity over the past, and just be thankful for what got you to where you are. And don't have any hate towards anybody. I think that's the biggest thing.